right. All right, so welcome. The first part of this webinar will be around family engagement. So let's get started. Just to remind you, our core Project Ready team is myself, Rosie Warburg, who's not with us this morning, but you've seen her on other webinars, and Maria Aielli. And then we have a great team of other colleagues who also support this work. I wanted to take us back to the MTS model in early childhood because our topics this morning really reinforce some key components of this model that I just wanted to bring back to everybody's attention. So in our first webinar, we introduced this model as a model that Project Ready was built around. And it's really the model that tells us how we make sure we support the needs of all children. And of course, that starts with good, strong, universal core instruction, and then targeted supports. And then what we're going to talk about later this morning is more intensive supports or modifications we need to make for children who have some exceptional needs. I just kind of wanted to kind of frame us in this because this is such a key component of Project Ready and really what Project Ready was built to help schools be able to do. So as we've said, we really want to make sure that our strong core instruction is in place and that the core instruction has opportunities to allow us for kids who need a little bit more, kids who need a lot more, and kids who need different ways of accessing the curriculum. So that's what we're going to talk about in the second part, is different ways to access the curriculum. Core components of MTSS that we talked about, and in the first webinar, I told you one of my favorite books around this topic is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support for Young Children. And that's a great one if you're looking for something more to read. It's actually not just about reading, but all academic areas, which, as you know, Project Ready covers as well, and things around supporting children in terms of behaviors and social and emotional. And so it's a wonderful read. You might want to check it out. So today, some key components that we're going to talk about are continuum support. And to start off, family, school, partnerships. So really thinking about supporting our families and making sure our families are partnering with us in terms of the education of their children. Under the category of family engagement, we have a couple materials that you utilize and check out. The first is just some materials that you can share with your families. The first one on the left, we have just a Project Ready infographic meant to be kind of a brief little handout that you could give to parents. When we print it, we print it on card stock and kind of, just cut it. We put 2 on each page and cut it. And we've used these at like beginning of the year open houses, or I know some teachers have shared with us, they've also used it at parent-teacher conferences, just as a way to talk and share about the curriculum. So that's one resource. The other resource is for each unit, we have a little trifold that you can print for families that really talks about what the children are going to learn in that unit. And I'm actually going to pull up our website just for a second so that, oops, I didn't need to stop sharing, did I? Just so I can point out where these materials are. So I'm on the Project Ready website. If you scroll down past the curriculum materials, we have a family materials section. And near the bottom, oopsie, nope, I'm sorry, I lied, it's up here, parent information pamphlets. Here is where each of the pamphlets for the individual units are. So I'll just pull up one so you can, there's the information graphic, infographic. I'll just pull up one, I'll just choose South America because we haven't looked at that one. And we do have these in both English and Spanish because the schools that we support have like an 80% Spanish speaking population. So that really helped us know that that was a need. So if that's a need for you, and right now we just do have the 2 languages, we're happy to explore adding other languages as there's needs. Again, it's a trifold. So, and all of them are set up the same. So that's also something that hopefully is helpful. It has the little graphic we use to introduce the unit. It shares with family the books that we will read in this unit, and then just a little brief discussion of what we'll learn in this unit. And right on the front, it kind of bullet points the key things that will be learned in this unit. And then within the little trifold, it has the vocabulary words that we'll work on, and a little description about rich vocabulary and why we work on these, more academic words in preschool. We do the little language activity, so we write that out so families know this is the language activity that they could practice together if they wanted to at home. Then we highlight the Dramatic Play Center and talk about the importance of play, and then how we use play to teach some of the concepts in Project Ready. So let me pull back up my PowerPoint. So that's just a little bit about where you can find those materials. And again, each of the different units has a little trifold. So the way we use that, and we know because the families that we work with, there's a variety of literacy skills. And so we actually debated a lot about if this was needed. This came about because teachers were asking for it. And so we thought, because we had thought about this even before that, but we thought with the varying literacy levels, we weren't sure if it would be, really utilized. But the teachers we were working with asked for something like this. So we did it, and it has been well received. And I'm sure there's some families who don't access it, but it seems like a number of our families do enjoy getting this information. At Mount St. Joseph University, we have a lab school on campus that serves children of faculty and also staff and students. And I know this has been kind of a hit at that school. So again, but really at all of our schools, they've appreciated it. And the teachers said they enjoy it too. So that was a new thing we began this year. So the big component that we do around family engagement, besides communicating what we're doing and sharing information about child development, is we do Learning Together family packs. And I tell you, this has been one of the most fun things to do with Project Ready, because it has been overwhelmingly popular with families. And so I think we thought it would be popular, obviously, because that's why we built it. But I think it surprised even everyone on our team how popular it was. So I'm going to talk to you about what these packs are and how you might utilize. So every unit starting with North America, well, doesn't have a family pack yet, because we wanted to introduce all the different areas and concepts and then start sending a family pack. We have talked about possibly adding a kindness one. So that might be something we'll do, and definitely we'll appreciate your feedback if people are using these and think that's of value. But it seems like by North America is good timing to introduce this. So we've done this the last 2 years, and it's been very, very popular. The key idea with our Learning Together family packs is that the child is teaching their grown-up what they've learned at school. So all of the things that the children will take home to do with their family, they have done in the classroom multiple times. And so these are things that they can go to their mommy or daddy or abuela or grandma and say, hey, let me show you what I've learned at school. Let me teach you these concepts. So we've kind of capitalized on the natural tendency of preschoolers to like to be a little bit bossy and like to be in charge, and shared with them how to work with their grown-ups around this. And it seems to be quite, as I said, quite a hit. In the family packs for each unit, we do start with a little family meeting. And I'll tell you, this was also a nice surprise and very fun. So we start with a family meeting where we share with them, here's what's in the pack, here's how to let your child teach you about what's in the pack. We give them some tips. The purpose of this is fun and a positive engagement around learning activities. So we talk with them about, if your child doesn't know one of the letters, it's completely fine, because we're going to keep working on these letters, but we've introduced them, and now they can tell you a little bit about the ones they want to tell you about. So we really have a big focus on fun and just letting the child lead the conversation. And then we go through the different activities with the families. Originally, we thought, we would do this once, maybe twice, but the families actually asked us, or the teachers, whoever was doing it, different schools do it slightly differently. The families actually asked if we could do it before each pack. And so we have started doing that. And it's really fun because the families are very excited to learn about it. And one thing at our lab school that Maria started doing, which worked well at the lab school, which probably wouldn't have worked as nicely at the project schools, or at least a couple of them, is she actually made some like videos that she emailed to the families, a way of just saying, everybody can't make it to the family meeting, so here's, to get the information. So if technology is something your families have, I thought that was a wonderful thing. I think the families really appreciated that, because they are, brief, doesn't take what the materials are and how to use them, especially if you, have gone to a meeting. So in each bag, there's a letter activity, and this is an activity, alphabetic small group that they then can do at home. There's a numbers been used in the math activity unit, that unit. Wordless books from the unit, and have a very brief little activity, but mainly it's the child, the story of the wordless book. We choose one theme book, an activity done in class to connect to the theme. And then we have one of the puppets from Telling Terrific Tales, one of the puppet sets. We have Blackline Masters that are also on our, that the kids can, here, let me show you the puppet kit right here. This is our North America puppet kit, the Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad. We have Blackline Masters and popsicle sticks, crayons, and glue all in a little pack. Color and make, little stick puppets, and then tell the story of the, and this again is from Telling Terrific Tales that they've done multiple times in the classroom. Now they can tell the story to their families. And I tell you, of all the things, I think this has been the biggest hit. And I work with on a different project where they were not able to do Project Ready fully, but they've used one of the components they used is Telling Terrific Tales, and they are sending home the puppet packs, which I think is wonderful and works nicely. They tend to purchase materials for all of it. So I just wanted to point that out because I know you might not have the books. I will tell you that the books, everything comes back except for consumable things, but the letter cards we laminate and put on a little ring. And these are just the letters that we have introduced to the children up to that point. So those all of that stuff comes back. The puppet pack, the puppet stay at home, but the puppet materials come back, like the crayons and glue. So we do reuse things. It's an initial investment to purchase some book for sure. So I just, because you could use little components of this and still have an impact, because that's worked really nicely at the school that that is doing just the puppet part, because what a great little oral language activity to do at home. The other thing I will tell you, when we first started doing this, we actually imagined that we might just have like 3 family packs in each classroom and they could rotate. But with COVID, we weren't able to share materials in the same way, and then honestly, it works really nicely, but I think that could be a less expensive alternative, because that's what we were thinking. Like, most schools might not be able to buy a little set of books for their school to use across the years. So that is another idea of, if you have a small set of packs that rotate through the kids at the end of the unit. Timing just gets a little challenging, I think, in organization. That's kind of feedback teachers gave us, but that was our original idea. So again, the children take their little pack home, and they go through the activities with their, somebody at home. Here's the astronomy pack, just to give you another look. So with the alphabetic letters, we do in the alphabetics group. These are the same pictures and same letters in the alphabetics group. We just made a take-home version of them. One time we do Play-Doh, that was North America. Another time it's Wikisticks. These are all, again, materials we use in the alphabetics group, so they're really familiar with them. Another time we use our little stretchy little sticks. I can't remember what they're called now, monkey sticks. So again, kids are really super knowledgeable about like, oh, I know this is a sunflower because I've done this in school. That's the really important thing, is the kids are teaching their grown-ups. The nonfiction book or the theme-based book, it's typically a nonfiction book, but not always. For astronomy, it's the National Geographic Planets book. And the idea here isn't, I mean, parents can definitely read this to the child as well. But the big idea is that the child is using this book to talk about all the different planets. And then we just, for this one, have a very simple activity where they can make a picture of their own planet or make a picture of a planet in the book that they like. So just some examples. We try to keep the activities very simple so that, again, the kids know exactly what to do, and that the parents can just kind of enjoy doing the activity with the child. We also include a little checkoff sheet for the families that includes pictures. This is, again, the astronomy one. And the idea here is also for it to be a little reminder of what the activity is. So, so you can see here's the alphabetics with the WikiSticks, and you can see a little adult doing the WikiSticks with the child, same thing with the numbers. So it's meant to be kind of a little prompt like, hey, here's all the activities. And we also use it as a way for parents to give us some feedback. So at the bottom, there's a little place for them to make a comment, and they check off what they do along the way. And we have gotten just some really fun comments back from families. This was actually, it's kind of good timing I was doing this because Rosie just sent me some feedback from, this is from the astronomy pack. So it was a couple months ago, but kind of compiled some of the comments. So the families really do seem to enjoy this. And, you know, from the comments, we can see that what we were hoping for, you know, was happening. So one of the things with our project that we wanted to see is to try to understand how these were being used, well, if they were being used. And so we look at the comments, of course, but of course not all families send back comments. Sometimes we just get checkoffs. And so another way that we kind of measured use was we created a scale to look at the use of the bags. So every bag, and this is just because this is the research project. So we wanted to be able to understand how things were being used. And as preschool educators, you know that you often can tell when something has been used, that has gone home and come back. And so we kind of use that thinking to understand and measure how the bags were being used. So we have 4 categories. The first is strong use. And so what we did is we looked at the materials and said, you know, was the in the first pack, was the Play-Doh used? You can easily see that if you open the Play-Doh container and see if it's used. We have this little picture because this is a nice, clear evidence of use. They actually sent the letters and number cards back with the Play-Doh still stuck on, which was not the intent, but we thought that was a pretty nice evidence of use. So we use that as our picture. But we look to see if the Play-Doh was used. We can see if the crayons were used and the glue was used. We look at, you know, were things in disarray? Were the puppets gone from the pack? Sometimes people send the puppets back. Were they colored? And, you know, all of that good stuff. So we measure, depending on the pack, how things were used. And if we could see clear use with 4 more things, they got a strong, you know, they were in the strong category. If 3 or more items showed evidence of use, they got a good category. And then you can see 2 was some, 1 was little, and then if there's no use, actually that was a 0. Sorry, there were 5 categories. So here's our data. So this is from 2 schools that we worked with last year. I will tell you, last year, our larger district that we work with, it was their first year of implementation, and they were really not sure that the family packs were a good idea, just to be honest, at first, which we appreciated. They were also learning a new curriculum, and there was a lot of new stuff being thrown at them. They also had some challenges with COVID, as many schools did last year. So it was not the right time to start with them last year. And the really wonderful thing is they were ready to do it this year, and it has gone just so well. And I think it kind of surprised the teachers that it went as well as it did at their school. So I will tell you that their district showed very similar results so far this school year as our 2 schools who did it last year. But this is from 2 schools last year. And so for North America, the blue is strong, and then so again, 4 more items, and then the green is some use, so you can just eyeball, and then the yellow is little or none. But you can just eyeball and see the North America pack, 98% of them or 92% of them showed strong or some use. So that was pretty darn good. And it fluctuates a little bit across time. And this was the very last month of school. And we saw a little, but still, 82% is pretty good in terms of percentage of use. The other thing that we looked at that I'll tell you, we don't have a graph about it, but I will tell you, it was different families. There were some families who always did it, but we didn't have any families didn't do it at all. So, maybe 1 month, there was a family who didn't do it, but then the next month we showed strong use. So that was reassuring to us too, because it was being used across all of our families to some degree. And we all know, especially if you're a parent, some months are just, some weeks, or because it goes home for a week, are trickier than others. So that was also really reassuring to us. The other thing I'll tell you, as I've already said, is the families really loved it, and the teachers really enjoy it too, because they have some wonderful interactions with families about the bags. When the bags go home, what we've decided to do is we send them home on Friday, so they kind of have the weekend and then the next week to complete them, and then we ask them to come back the next Friday. And so it's always very exciting the day the bags go home, both from the children and the teachers and the family. So it's really just this nice, joyful thing that has happened at our schools, at least. So, I just got a message that I'm freezing up. Am I okay now, Rosie or Maria? Hopefully, sorry.
Yeah, it seems to be fine on my end, but if anyone's having issues, let me know.
Okay, sorry. Was it a big part or just a little glitchy thing?
I think just little glitchies, but I think you're okay.
Anything I need to repeat that didn't come across?
That would be up to the participants to decide. I heard everything fine, but I've heard it before. So let's see if they need anything repeated.
You're like, I might have just filled in the blanks. I get it. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm doing this one from home, and home internet is always a little, surprising. So if anybody needs anything repeated, please let me know. Oh, somebody said it's just a little lag here, so sorry about that. Okay, great. Just to remind you, here's our website address, and you can get to the Project Ready materials either by clicking on the Learn More, or right at the top it says Preschool. You can click on it there. Any questions about the family engagement piece? And then I'm going to turn it over to Maria in just a second. Do we entertain any questions there might be? Oh, the chat is disabled. Yes, so put your questions in the question and answer. Sorry, I said the wrong thing. I said chat instead of question and answers. So yeah, if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And that's the same thing for Maria's section. Sorry, I pointed you to the wrong little button on Zoom. So. All right. Well, since there are not any other questions, I will now turn it over to Maria.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So my name, again, is Maria Aielli, and I'm really just going to be discussing how we support students with exceptionalities through the curriculum. So let me get my clicking correct here. All right, so again, Amy already introduced the team, so here are just more pictures of us if you want to put faces with names. So first I want to start by kind of talking about some vocabulary and just making sure we're all on the same page as we discuss these supporting students with the curriculum. So first I want to talk about exceptionalities. When we are talking about exceptionalities in this webinar, we're really talking about our students who are identified with either a disability or giftedness. Most common in preschool, of course, we're only going to be seeing students who are diagnosed with disabilities. So it can be a multitude of things, but just giving you an idea of what that might look like. As far as educating students with exceptionalities, there are two ways that general educators really focus on including everyone in their classroom. And these two approaches are universal design for learning and also differentiated instruction. Of course, we always want to look to the child's IEP first, and in addition to these two other approaches, to make sure that we are meeting students' needs in the classroom. You have a team of support when you are working with the child who is on an IEP, so make sure you're utilizing that team and reaching out and having meaningful conversations about what this child needs and what it might look like for that child to access the curriculum in your classroom. So when I discuss universal design for learning, I'm really talking about creating a classroom and a lesson that keeps the needs of all students in mind. So we're starting from the beginning saying, this is what my students need. I'm going to design a lesson that meets all of their needs in a variety of ways. And when we talk about differentiated instruction, we're talking about how can I change what's happening in my classroom to respond to student needs. And these changes can take some different forms. It can be the content that you deliver, the process in which you deliver the content, the products that you are asking for from a student, and also the environment, so the way you're setting up your classroom. So all of these things are areas that can be differentiated. Some students might need one area differentiated, and other students might need all four areas. So let's talk about this in our curriculum. So how does Project Ready address specific learning needs within the curriculum? There are four big ways that we really do this. First, we start by using universal design for learning. We really took the needs of all students into consideration when creating this curriculum. There are also intervention components called playful interventions that support students who struggle with learning names of letters. There's also an intervention called Basic Concepts, which talks about the basic preschool skills, and also the use of modified materials and activities. So I'm going to dive into each of these a little deeper. And if you have questions at any time, please just interrupt me. It's totally fine, and I'll address your questions. So first up is universal design for learning. So the way that the Project Ready curriculum really took this into consideration was thinking about how can we engage all students from the beginning. So we really wanted to create routines that were engaging for all students, that all students could access. There are a lot of opportunities for small group teacher-led activities. So that means that students are pooled into small groups with a teacher multiple times per day. There's multiple opportunities for practice of newly learned skills. And also we really focused on having lots of play and fun in the curriculum. The next component are the playful interventions. So these are activities that are used to support students who are really struggling with mastery of letter names when they're given the alphabetics routine. So you guys learned about alphabetics in a previous webinar, and these playful interventions were mentioned there, but I just kind of wanted to go back and show you that these are really specific for our students who struggle. So our students who are given ample opportunity to practice learning the new names of the letters in the alphabetic small group routine, they've gone through the review lessons, they've done all the practice and play, and it's still not clicking. What do I do for those students? If it's still not working, what do I do? This is when I bring in the playful interventions games. And these games are supposed to be super fun. And so you hide them in a nice little fun box, and you only pull them out when you want to work on these specific letters that students need to practice. And you're like, oh my gosh, do you want to help put my squishies to bed today? And so that's probably my favorite game that students like to play right now, where they have these little squishies and little beds, and they have to match the capital letter with the capital letter on the bed, and it's written on the squishy and written on the bed. And the whole point of it is they say the letter name over and over and over and over again. So they're playing a fun little game with you, either one-on-one or two-on-one with a teacher. It takes 5 minutes, and they get to do a fun special activity that is not typically sitting out in the classroom. So again, this is a way that we can support student learning, provide a little bit more intensive instruction, but in a really fun and engaging and special way. Another thing I want to say about playful interventions is we provide different activities for every 4 new letters. So after 4 new letters are introduced, we have a set of playful intervention activities. So this is just an example of 3 of the games that we have available, but there are more available either on the website or coming soon. So if they're not on the website yet, they will be there soon for you to download. And again, you might come up with some great activities as well, because you're very creative preschool teachers. So feel free to come up with great activities to use in your classroom, just focusing on that letter name that they need to practice. The other area where we meet students' needs is the basic concepts lessons. And we're going to go into more detail about this routine during the math webinar. So I just wanted to kind of introduce this to you very briefly to show that in the curriculum, you're going to have students who come into your classroom at all different levels, right? So some are coming in at 3, some might be coming in at 4, some come in with some really strong language background, some come in with none, some come in with lots of knowledge about colors and shapes, and some don't, right? That's okay. We have to meet our students where they are. So our basic concepts lessons are really created to meet students where they are. So we really just want to expose students to all of these basic concepts that they need to know in preschool. This is one of those routines that some of your students might not need, most of your students might not need, or majority of your students may need. You just don't know. It's going to be based on student need in your classroom. So you want to make sure you're looking at your assessment data to really determine who needs to work on these basic skills and who doesn't. And again, if you need to pull in a kid that already knows some shapes and colors, that's okay. You're not going to hurt going over these concepts again. Okay. So then the last area I really want to talk about is some modified materials and activity. So how do we support student learning in the classroom when they're struggling? The first thing we want to do is increase the frequency of instruction. So when we are looking at our small group routines, students who have lots of skills do not need to meet with you as frequently. Students who have less skills require more support. So we want to pull them more days per week to provide that small group instruction. And also think about the size of the group and the creation of the group. Okay, who is in the group? Are we working on alphabetic skills? If you're working on alphabetics, you really want to pull students who need the same skill instruction. They're at the same level of instruction, so they're working on the same skills. If we are working on an oral language routine, like these students just need a lot more practice with oral language, that's a place where you can really look at your assessment data and determine, I want a heterogeneous group of people in this small group practice so that I have students with lots of language mixed with students with not so much language, so they're getting a lot of modeling of that great language from my higher students. So you really just want to be really thoughtful and mindful about how you're pulling your groups. Additionally, I want to kind of take a step back and say that every student, especially our students with exceptionalities, they have different needs. And there's no way that I can say this is going to work for all students, because we know in the world of intervention and special education that that's just not the case. So I really wanted to just kind of show you what has worked for our students in our environment that we've been working in. So one thing that we have found to be really helpful is the use of visual supports. This is really helpful for students who need support with transitions, who need support with staying on task. We really provide visual supports to break down routines step by step to show them this is the beginning, this is what we're doing next, and this is the end. I've also worked with students who had visual impairments. So we really needed to think about, okay, this is the material we're using, but my students who have visual impairments really need a modified material, and how can I make it accessible for them? So we'll talk about that, and I'll show you some things we did. We also introduced the use of picture supports for students who may need extra practice learning vocabulary or need some more engagement with visuals to really stay on task. Another thing we really focus on a lot in our curriculum and just preschool instruction in general is errorless learning. This concept of errorless learning is really focusing our attention on providing students with the correct response when needed. So first, we want to make sure we're providing explicit instruction. We're explaining what we're doing, we're modeling what we're doing, and then we're providing lots of practice. Within that practice, I'm giving immediate corrective feedback and positive support. And what we've done in several areas of this curriculum is provide a script for you of how to engage in errorless learning with your students. If this is not something you're familiar with, we found that it doesn't come naturally, right? We need to provide this script to show you, if a student gets an answer wrong, how can I respond so that I'm providing positive, immediate corrective feedback. So you will find scripting for feedback in your alphabetics routines in those books, those alphabetics books. Another thing we really want to focus on is, again, just using that assessment to guide instruction. We talked about this before, but making sure that using homogeneous groupings when it's necessary. So when we're working on our alphabetic skills, when we're working on our math skills, but then also heterogeneous groupings when we're working on oral language. So we have a student with lots of language being a model for a student who doesn't have as much language yet. And then we also, assessments don't always have to be formal. We can use the informal observations. You as teachers know so much about your students. Assessments provide a really great picture, formal assessments, but also informal observations can give a lot of information about what students can and can't do and what supports they need. So I just want to say that the most important thing is that we're providing opportunities for all students to access the curriculum. The assumption should be that all students can access it. So given any exceptionality that walks into your classroom, it should be like, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to try it first, and I'm going to attempt to use the curriculum as it's written. And if it doesn't work, then I need to really look at what modifications I can use, maybe how I can change it to meet the needs of my students. So the importance is just making sure that they are included. The district that we're working with now, it is a preschool disabilities classroom. So the classrooms have students with disabilities, and in preschool, some of these students have some pretty significant needs. And it's just important that we're getting students the opportunity to access the curriculum. And it should always be the assumption that they are able to access the curriculum, and then we can make modifications as needed. So these are some examples of what we have done in the classrooms we work with now, just based on student needs. So again, this will look different depending on your students, your classrooms. I mean, it can be any number of things that could work. And this is not something for you alone to figure out. You have a team, you have an IEP team to support you in making these decisions and figuring out what works. So just make sure you're reaching out to people for support. So some of the things we found really accessible and really helpful to increase accessibility was including Velcro tasks. A lot of my students really enjoy Velcro. I don't know why, but they really like that tactile experience of including Velcro. So just when we have to manipulate different items and moving them back and forth, Velcro seems to be really helpful. For my student with a visual impairment, we had to make black and white puppets for telling terrific tales just because they could see black and white better than the felt puppets that we had originally. Easy, right? That was an easy change that we could make to ensure that that child could still access that part of the curriculum. Also, we've had to enlarge our alphabet cards. So our alphabet cards that we use are quite, they're small. But for students with visual impairments, they just didn't work. So I had to make full-size alphabet cards for them. With our math manipulatives, the math manipulatives we were using were small, like laminated pieces of paper. And for some of my students, they either wanted to eat them or they couldn't pick them up and use them appropriately. So I found some larger blocks that are not smooth. They kind of have a rough texture to them and they can be stuck together, so they're easier to manipulate for my students who had difficulty grasping the small paper letters. I also had to use some foam letters and numbers, again, for students who just everything immediately went to the mouth, right? So when I'm using paper letters, they would just get a little damp, right? So I don't want to use those all the time. So finding something that I could clean or use just for one child. So if it went in the mouth, we were aware that it was okay. And there's just another picture of using those foam numbers with the blocks. So again, it looks a little different than it typically shows up in the curriculum, but they're still accessing the same skills and engaging in the same type of instruction. Some other materials we've had to use recently, sorry, I'm moving my things around. We had these large magnetic letter building activities because handwriting and doing some of the wiki sticks and the monkey noodles and alphabetics just didn't work for the student I had. So I had to think of another way that they could still engage in letter formation in that alphabetics routine, just not with the activities that I had included. And then also for a student with visual impairment needed some support with vocabulary. So we had these large posters made so that they could see them because the pictures in the book were too small for them to access. And then also a light board with some transparent letters because the alphabet cards, they could not see them. The contrast wasn't great enough. So we found some hard plastic letters that go on a light board, and that was easier for them to access. So I feel like I just threw a lot of information at you. So again, like Dr. Murdoch said, our website is kind of getting a revamp. And also this is a work in progress. Every day that I'm in the classroom, a new challenge kind of presents itself. And as an intervention specialist, that's what I enjoy and I love to work with. So I'm always changing and creating materials for students. So I have a link here to the materials, and I will share this in the chat for you, just to kind of give you what we've used so far. So again, if you want to access those, you can, and I will upload this to the chat so you can click on this. Okay, that's the end for me. So I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions, please let me know, but I'm going to get that link for you and put it into the chat really quickly. But while I'm doing this, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll attempt to talk while I'm doing this. But I'm not great at that. And I did enable the chat, so this should work for you. Let me know if you do not get it. All right, so I will go ahead and put my email up one more time for you. If you have any questions about accessibility, modifications, or ways that you can change the curriculum to meet a student need, you can feel free to email me. Actually, I'll just put it in the chat. That may be easier for you. Maria Aielli at msj.edu. But if you don't have any questions, that is the end of our webinar today. So thank you for joining us this morning on a Saturday. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you next time.